And Jay will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everybody. We will get started, and we're almost on time. So we will piece of paper, so it must be a modification to it.
Get a supplemental personnel report dated today to the agenda.
Very good, and that's in front of you. And without, well, we have a quorum. We have a quorum, and we will proceed. And we do have some folks signed up to speak, and we're glad to do that, as we always are. And Bart, you are up first.
Mr. Ainsley, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to present a petition that's been signed by 3/4 of the personnel from Bus Garage. I've given the original copy to Danielle and Bruce as well. So, reminded me, I was a teacher in Moravia. Pledge of Allegiance, that was the normal routine in class. The drivers, riders, and mechanics that signed this document have over 400 years of combined experience in safely delivering our district students. These dedicated professionals care deeply about the safety of our children. In fact, we take great pride in our safety record. I feel that our high standard of performance is threatened by a heavy-handed style of management that has currently left 3 of our drivers suspended to 30 working days. These men made were intentional, and in fact, none of the mistakes that were made resulted to a student. I taught social studies for 9 years in the Moravia School District, and the unintentional mistakes that were made in my classroom had a name. They were called learning opportunities. I also was an officer in the United States Navy. As Lieutenant JG on my ship, I had the collateral duty of being our ship's helicopter control officer. In the naval aviation community, when a series of related incidents occur, such as what's happened at the bus garage, fleet-wide stand-downs are ordered so that the problems can be fixed, and retraining, so that retraining can occur. Education was the answer for the Navy, and it is for us as well. As an officer, I was also trained to lead the men of my division into combat. That job was a lot harder than what is necessary to get men and women to happily get into their buses every morning and do their jobs safely. But the same leadership skills are required, and they can be taught. I want anyone in the human resource department to lose a job over this issue of mismanagement. We see this as an opportunity for education. There is no doubt that our management is. They want us to do our jobs as safely as possible, but they do need to be taught the skills necessary to do the jobs in a way that doesn't destroy the dignity and morale of those that work for them. We are paying for the next time and a half to drive buses, so obviously we can afford to send managers to one person. You know, I enjoy being a bus driver now. It is a rewarding occupation. But now I struggle to motivate myself to come to work. This is a comment, like I said, I've heard from more than one driver. One driver told me how she dreads opening up her root box. It will be a see me note from the Director of Transportation. The present policy of suspensions is counterproductive. It has created a dangerous situation for our standby drivers and our students, and it has destroyed the morale of those that signed this petition, which again is over the personnel of the bus garage. A more enlightened approach is needed. A progressive form of discipline needs to be implemented. This is common practice in industry. You get a letter in your file. Maybe then you get a suspension. Maybe then you get terminated. But there's a paper trail. There's a, you don't just take a person that's been doing their job well for years and hammer them. We certainly don't want to be part of the problem, but we do want to be part of the solution. We highly recommend that the board investigate this matter, and I'm sure that our drivers would be willing to sit on a committee and be interviewed by one. We desperately ask you and the community at large to intervene on our behalf. So thank you for your time.
And the petition has been submitted, correct?
It has.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And Jennifer Engel, our buddies from IPEI.
Thank you. I am Jennifer Engel. I am here this evening and to remind you of some contentious issues. It is the annual IPEI Adult Spelling Bee. Teams of 3 adults will be battling for the coveted Fuzzy Bee trophy. We know that there are a few people that are sitting before us who will be participating, battling for that bee trophy. It needs a new home. Not that its home from last year is any sort of snicker at, but it needs a new home. There will be some incredible new events going on, and the point of this, we all know, is to raise money for grants for teachers. We find that at IPEI it is our most coveted program that we do. Everyone loves applying for them. We love giving them out. We love spending your money. That's what we like to say. And the teachers who get them seem to be pretty happy as well. So I want to remind everyone to study as best as they can, relax, calm down, and show up at the bee.
There will be blood, though.
There may be honey, there may be blood. We expect it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. It's a lot of fun. We've been involved for a while, so it's. I look at Dr. Brown. Whether you are you doing a team again?
Yeah, we've already dumped it all the place, put it in the trophy.
Oh, okay. So I think they need a lot of people to go out in the first round, frankly, but, from what I've seen. But we appreciate the efforts of all the teams that will be competing. IPEI does a great job providing grants. Jennifer, I mean, what you all do on an annual basis, really supporting the district. How much do we know? Was it 74,000 last year?
Close to 75, Rob.
Well, just about 75. Well, close to 75,000 that IPEI contributed to the district through a variety of small, large, medium grants, really just on the classroom level, on a Kids Discover the Trail is more of a district-wide level, but really tremendous impact on what the kids are able to experience throughout the year. So our thanks to IPEI and then Adult Spelling Bee, because yes, I am sponsoring again this year. So text in the mail, Jennifer. I haven't done it yet, but I will. So yes.
Are you supporting the losing team?
I'm not sure. I support the board team, not the administration team. Yeah. And frankly, the board and Pat, the board team was robbed last year. I mean, I really did almost come out of the stands and demand because you were, it was the over not go as I thought it should.
Rob.
Really. And Pat, you bring as many ringers.
That the public-spirited citizen who stepped in at the last minute for one of our board members is currently in London teaching Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek to a group of young high school men. Available to step in.
We need a ringer for our ringer. Our linguist we need another linguist for our linguist. Okay, that's it. And that, frankly, is the only way we were able to be competitive. But Pat, you are on the team again?
I am the captain again.
We are looking for you.
My stalwart teammates have stepped up to the bat.
Okay.
And I am probably the only one on this board who says it's better to go down in flames with than to advance with a Sanskrit scholar.
I told Pat I will continue to publicly embarrass myself by spelling in public. It's for such a good cause that we really enjoyed ourselves.
And Pat, feel free to dump Eldred at any time if you All right, so we hyped the spelling bee as much as we can right now, and we're back to public comment. And Mark.
Yes.
Regarding transportation again.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for your service. You've been very appreciated. And Dr. Brown, thank you for all that you've done. Because I see you. I want to follow up. I've been a 15-year bus driver with Ithaca City School District. Before that, I had a long and checkered history, and I'm still a registered nurse. I was a professor of nursing. I'm a clinical nurse specialist and nurse practitioner. In terms of what Bart said, in terms of having responsibility in the I have responsibility in the final graduating year of students at PC3 to be able to say, no, you're not safe. I am the gatekeeper to the profession, and at this point, what I can see from your performance and the time that we've spent together with me trying to make assessments about what you're doing and how you're doing it, has led me to conclude that you're not yet ready to go into the workforce. You're not yet ready to have a stamp of approval that you're in the profession. It's not an easy thing. It's a hard thing. It's hard when you have to stand in front of somebody and say you're fired. Or basically, I don't know what the board knows about what's been going on. I don't know, and I assume that the board has no real approval, or hasn't to date, an approval in terms of how disciplined by the HR department in the Ithaca City School District. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. By show of hands, is anybody aware of what's been happening here? No. Okay, so this is an opportunity to educate you. You know, we've had drivers. The bottom line is that we all are first the safety of our students and their hearts and their home and their general well-being, as well as not letting them off in the snowbank to be frozen to death. But there have been occasions where something's happened and either a student has been left on a bus unattended by someone who didn't check their bus thoroughly, walked in to go to the bathroom at Boynton High School, and came back and discovered discipline. Recently, a driver was disciplined for having a student on board. This is a 17-year driver who does anything for this district and loves his kids and loves his job. And he, in a group stop up in the Northeast, where many of the students as well as the parents don't speak English, on a route that he never drove before, because we're in such short staff because of all these issues that have been going on. People have been relieved from duty. He let a student off the bus without stopping the student, identifying the student by name, determining what grade the student, determining if he was 7 years or in second grade, who he was being released to. A mistake. It happened. The kid got up with his friend. It was his first day in school. He had never been on a school bus before, this kid. And this driver happened to draw this. And it happened, and the kid got off the bus with his friend and went immediately to a parent. Now what happened after that is, we don't really understand, but there are things that could be said after the kid got off. We went on to the next stop where the mother was waiting for the child, and the driver was radioing and saying, I have a student who's missing, could somebody get out? And as he's talking with the base over the radio, all of a sudden, the mother says, okay, and goes away. She's non-English speaking. The child is really non-English speaking. The names are impossible to pronounce, and when you hear them pronounced, you can't spell them. So this happened to this driver. Consequently, the driver was facing termination and would have been terminated, apparently. However, what was subsequently offered to this driver, as it has been offered to other people, you get 6 weeks off without pay, which means in this right now we have a 1 week vacation, so essentially 7 weeks off pay, and have to sign off that he won't grieve it in any way. There are extenuating circumstances for this. It's not black and white, although it is black and white. The white thing is that critical moment where he failed to do what he was supposed to do. And we know what this is. But what is punishment? Where's the educative moment? You know, where is the kind of acknowledgement of 17 years of history and service to the Ithaca City School District, his experience, all the time that he's had on the road, going on trips, all of the education that he's had, all the workshops that were mandated to have in order to maintain our certification, all these in-services that we have, all the safety things that we have going on. In one moment, he lost his job, or he's out $3,000, folks. I just spent $2,970 some odd dollars city and county taxes. When livelihood away from somebody, $3,000 take home. That's not pitiful. That's not unmeaningful. This is a significant punishment. And
Mark, you've asked a lot of questions, and obviously you're asking about a specific incident that we can't respond in public.
You respond.
Right. So
I'm putting it out here for your education.
Right.
I'm
and
putting
so
it
I
out
think,
here for the education of the
and we
board
appreciate that.
to say, please look into the process. Where is progressive discipline? Where is a measure between in the snowbank, frozen to death, and momentarily inconvenienced? Maybe there is none. Some people seem to think that one is good. I don't believe that. I don't believe that when you have humans we're talking about, not just robots and disposable people. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Mark. And on to Ann and our fighters of the GEA.
Okay, I just have very quick. I was here last time and I was worried about the GEA, capital elimination adjustment, and I'm back again because I'm still worried about it. And so my question for you as board is I'm wondering what kinds of worries you have this week as opposed to last time I was here. Has anything changed, and what kinds of concerns you have, going forward in crafting the budget? And in addition to that, how the effects of the fact that you don't have those release of the fund, the kind of whatever they call the state runs, how that is impacting your process for making decisions. So that's all.
Thanks, Ann, and we can respond in a few minutes after we hear from the students. But at this time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Adam, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm Adam Paisecki, President of the Teachers Association, teacher in the district. So just a couple comments from where I stand in the ITA. It's the second semester. I think this is the first board meeting since we launched that. So at the elementary level, it's just another day in the winter. Where at the secondary level, it can be changes of courses for students and teachers. But anyway, it's at that halfway mark, so we're one semester left to the end of the year, and somehow it's amazing we get here, even though we always do. We will have an ITA team at the Spelling Bee. Thanks to Jennifer Belaski. She works with me. We have a sponsor, appropriately the Education Department at Ithaca College for Ithaca teachers. So it's a nice little pairing. I unfortunately can't do it this year. I'm actually disappointed. In Albany, gearing up to lobby with legislators about GEA and funding, so I can't be here this year. Just happened to not line up for my schedule, but there are two elementary teachers and an Ithaca High School English teacher who will be representing our organization and teachers in the district. Just wanted to then again remember to say, we all need to be speaking up. Teachers, administrators can be lobbying with legislators here locally or Albany, but obviously they need to be hearing from more of everyone. So I did want to take this opportunity to let you know details are finalized, and I have about 20 copies of a flyer here. So what's nice about teachers and school-related professionals is that our statewide organization 600,000 strong. So with that amount of manpower and voices, there are education forums being held across the state. I believe in this region, which is called the Southern Tier, which stretches quite far out, past Oneonta, past Addison, when you think east to west, and then up towards Ithaca. The Oneonta one, I think, was already held. There's one scheduled in Corning, one scheduled in the Homer-Cortland area, and then the Ithaca area one is going to be at Lansing Middle School on March 19th. And all of the legislators, Senator Seward, Assemblyman Lifton, and Senator Nozzolio, and other politicians kind of in the area, to come, and we will get confirmation from them, from their legal aides, as to whether they will be attending, but it's open for everybody. The event is entitled Because We Care About Public Education. It's about the GEA. It's about the inequities of funding. It's about hostage. Our legislators are the ones who are going to be able to maybe make or break as to what's going on from the governing body or our governor himself in Albany. So we're looking for Board of Education members, superintendents, other administrators, parents, taxpayers, school-related professionals to come. You don't have to speak, but it would show that presence that this is beyond just a few people across the state that have a concern. If you speak, and we are going to have to think about maybe one each district and maybe 2 or 3 parents, because there is time from 6:30 to 8 to contact the person that's on this flyer who's kind of organizing all of that, so we can have speakers lined up for the event. So I will kind of hand these out after I'm done speaking, but this is the one event where you can attend and speak up about what's going on. I actually speak to some parents, and it was quite interesting because they were they knew of some of the reforms that were being proposed by the governor, but they really didn't understand all of the details. And once they kind of started hearing some of the details on how devastating they could be to schools and how it was favoring charter schools in some ways and favoring other entities besides our children and families in public schools, they were realizing they wanted to learn more. Free to chat with anybody who wants to know more about or lead you to links to help you educate you on more of those to combat these reforms that are just going to devastate the future of our public education. So I will kind of hand this out, and I'm hoping that I see a lot of people there, and it'll be put out by all kinds of groups. But like I said, today's the first day that details were actually finalized, and these are, I think, actually still warm. They're just off the copier a little while ago. And then just a couple last points is that I cannot speak for any group that's speaking here today, but on behalf of teachers, I hope that you're listening and hopefully responding to concerns that are coming forward. Failures of a system or a root cause that is there should not be hurting the people who work so hard for the children and families in our community. Thank you.
Anyone else at this time? If not, we'll go right to LACS. Aiden.
Hello. ACS had 2 days off and a half day the past 2 weeks, and the students enjoyed that. Last weekend we had Hairspray. It was a mostly middle school class with some high schoolers in it, and it was really great. A lot of fun to watch, and then watch them work on it throughout the month. And our school development plan includes a commitment to equity. And since we're a democratic school, we have to democratically. So what we're doing is on this Friday, we're having an infusion day where students can go to workshops about gender, race, disabilities and abilities, and poverty, and can discuss and learn more about them. And I have right now.
So IHS on February 5th and 6th, there were the cabaret night auditions after school. There will be makeup on February 13th. And so what the cabaret night is a kind of a school-wide talent for students to sing, dance, and kind of show off their skill to a big crowd. And it's going to be all a bunch of fun. And it's actually going to be happening on March 6th and 7th. And then on February 7th, 2 to 4 p.m., Code Red hosted an open house for kind of like the tech departments around the school district. So like TSA, junior and first Lego League, Project Lead the Way classes kind of show the robots, the Lego creations, whatever they came up during the time of class. And there were even some hands-on activities for people to take part in. So you could create a building that would try to withstand an earthquake. And it would all help to support tech departments and to show how much kids are doing learning.
All right, so as was mentioned, it's a new semester, and in the words of Bon Jovi, well, I'm sure you know the rest. So students have finished their midterms in the regions, and some will be starting their new half-year classes, which should be interesting, have some nice electives. Additionally, student council has been up to some good. A new microwave is added to the cafeteria, and $500 were put in for Ithaca's Social Justice Week in March, which will have some lectures and some education just about general social justice issues. Rumor is that we're attempting to get Savante to speak, but more on that later. In the overall budget, there's $1,271 left to be distributed to clubs and other activities. And just overall, some updates. We had a pool filter replaced, and the pool is looking cleaner and approximately 8 degrees warmer, which I'm sure all the students in their swimming unit will thoroughly enjoy. Kids have been raising awareness for sorting trash, compost, and recycling, and I believe we have a possible Costa Rica trip over Feb break.
Okay. This past Saturday at Binghamton University, the Southern Tier Regional Competition for Science Olympiad took place. The Ithaca High team placed 4th overall, performing incredibly out of 14 teams for their second year in a row. They placed first in 2 events, and they won medals in 9. And seniors were given an affectionate goodbye last Thursday at the rink at the Varsity Boys Hockey Senior Night. The team played Cortland High School, and many people showed up to support and cheer on the team, which made it an overall great event.
Okay. Picture it, students from our transition class working up a sweat, feasting on refreshments and admiring their gracious and impressive contributions to our own physical education department. That's right. In the technology class last week, our students from the transition program have been designing, building, and enhancing soccer goals made from and plastic piping. Upon the conclusion of their construction, they then donated them to the physical education department, saving them over $500. I almost said $500,000, not quite that much, $500, which is significant. I said, well, you know, I noticed these new goals, and he's chairman of the department said, our transition program is built that. I said, this must be saving us money. He hands me a catalog. I did the math, and well, it really is. They built 8 goals, and there was a nice ceremony. We are very proud of the 2 new STEM, science, engineering, math, educators accepted into the Master Teacher program. The goal of this program is to retain and make STEM education all across the nation. And I just now 4 that members of the program. One really grasped the commitment of our teachers, really, to learn from one another, to help themselves. And, you know, I've heard directly from the 2 in the program saying that it does just that. And it's really helped them help themselves. And we had a heck of a time at the Tatler editorial board explaining the difference between a master teacher and a master educator. So that was fun. As they spoke about the GEA, we, probably them too, have been already getting questions about the budget. Well, what do we know? So we have to say, right now it's up to see what they give us, and it's not looking too good. But it's important to know what the GEA is. What is Albany's effect on us? That's significant. So we thank our parent group. This Thursday, 5:30 p.m., this IHS Site-Based Council will be discussing that. Mr. Granger will be joining us. And since we've, as Adrian mentioned, since we last met, we've had 2 snow days, 2 2-hour delays. So we see a 2-hour delay being a pretty successful, implementation. You kind of think, everybody's going to have their comments. Oh, we should have had a snow day. Oh, it's a 2-hour delay. Well, the goal of a 2-hour delay is, are we being safe? We wait those 2 hours, and ultimately, can we get kids to learn also? Yes, then, well, it's working. And, but again, we think, I'm going back to bed. Who cares about all that other stuff? But we know about the phone calls between Mr. Ellis at 4 a.m. and Dr. Brown, the work of our driver. And, I asked the students that have been talking, be prepared and be patient with our drivers. It's all hands on deck. They're short-staffed. We've got mechanics driving, the supervisors driving. So be prepared and patient with this weather and these wind chills thus far. And that concludes tonight's report.
Thanks, everyone. Excellent. Board responses? Pat, go ahead.
I'd like to respond to just a number of issues. First of all, thank you to Ann Reichlin and the SOS election boosters for getting the word out about this incredible issue and marshaling a lot of community support. They've been as students in a lot of public events and working very hard, and I'll let our more knowledgeable finance people follow up with that. IPEI for once again putting on the spelling bee where we will embarrass ourselves and raise money for a good cause. Thank you, bus drivers, for coming to talk with us tonight. I don't think there's a day that goes by when I drive out to work and I don't think about the bus drivers who have been out 2 hours before I have. It'll be out often 2 hours after I get home at night, and it's a very important job. I want you to know that we understand how hard you work for the district, and we appreciate the job you're doing, and I appreciate the feelings that you have that made so many of you come down here on a night when you're resting because you're going to get up very early in the morning. And I don't think we have an answer, but I personally want you to know that the board does value the years that you've brought and the work that you do, and believe that everyone in the district is trying to work towards the same goal, which is happy employees and safe kids. And I'm sorry that some of your colleagues had to leave before the board comments started.
Other comments? Brad, anything?
More to say about the GEA a little later.
So we'll respond to GEA comments probably during the superintendent's report. And Eldred, go ahead.
If I can stop coughing. Also want to reiterate what Pat said. Thank you, Bus, for coming down. We recently met Sean and Brad, I think, right? Spent some time in your neck of the woods, hanging with your director and seeing your facilities and listening to the concerns and seeing the 81 buses, looking at the sidewalks or lack of sidewalks. We scraped our feet on the parking lot. It's a significant operation. Bosses in my life that turned out to be bus drivers. Some what people would consider high-powered positions. So I appreciate what you guys bring. Our service, your education. Bus drivers in Ithaca are not what people think. But I do have to say this is one case in which someone needs to advocate for the people who come up to our knees, who don't come to meetings like this. Someone needs to say the words, children. Someone needs to say the words. So I'll be that person tonight. If if you looked at some of the statistics about what happened to kids regarding assault in this community, I think it's shocked. People aren't making up this idea that children are vulnerable here and everywhere else in the country. Not just freezing in snowbanks. Things actually happen to children, things that affect their lives, things that they can't recover from. So although we certainly do understand the work you do, we certainly understand that if we're talking averages, we're somewhere around the 99.9999999%, right, of being on the right side of this equation. It's important for someone to say, we only have one chance to do something that irrevocably changes the relationship between us and the family, and the child, and their caregiver, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm not going to reiterate all the things you said, but I think it's important for you guys to hear someone who's elected to be responsible for those clients first, mention their names, or to mention the specter that we want to keep them safe. Well, thank you, as Pat said, for coming down and speaking to us. It's good to see your faces.
Anyone else? And if not, we'll but certainly congratulations to the boys hockey team. They did win that. They did win on senior night, which is that's a good thing. And Connor, certainly for tomorrow night, there's probably no better Thursday night at the site base. There's probably no better authority on the GA than Brad, since Brad knows more about it than we're forced. We're forced to know far more about it than we would wish, but certainly has all the history, and we'll talk about budget in a few minutes, I think. But we're going to get through a very short consent agenda and then get on to superintendent's report.
I'll move the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Sean, second by Pat. It's pretty short with the addition of the modification of the personnel report. Any questions? We're good? All in favor? That's going to be everyone but Brad. And those opposed, those abstaining, that's going to be Brad. So that's to make it official. Now, Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
We've come around the room, and now we're on to you.
This will be a rather unique superintendent report, as it's been foreshadowed. And I'll begin with just piggybacking off of what Mr. Pasecki said. This is my fifth school year as superintendent, and my staff will tell you that I've tried very hard to keep the focus on teaching and learning. While we've been challenged fiscally and getting through the political climate of our state. But the issues that are before us now are issues. That's the first time I've said that. This is where we need to focus. The GEA and some of what I will say, and go on record as saying, some scary reforms that are coming down from my governor and from some folks that will impact us daily and can impact the work and some of the things that we've done as far as enhancing teaching and learning. So yeah, I'm going to be shifting. We need to stand up and advocate, be loud, do, and to shift the conversation some, advocate for fair and equal funding, but also have a conversation about some of the reforms. While some of them I can go along with, and some of them I agree with, some of them, quite frankly, will change what we do as educators. And we can't just let that happen and at the same time have our funding held hostage, as we've all heard. So with that, I'm gonna that's something else that's going to be unique. I'm going to partner with the board on the superintendent's report. We're going to try to do something, and I have a handout here. I'm going to put up a slide. Some folks that are here locally who have visited our classrooms, who have also remarked how impressed they are with the work that's happening here in Ithaca, but also understand that all that is with some things that are happening in our state. We need to reach out to them if we haven't already. We're going to be asking folks to do so. We have on the screen here tonight their names, their addresses, and if you've done it once or twice, it won't hurt to do it yet again. We have some, and I'll have all this out, and we'll hand these out in a minute. Their names, their addresses, and then I'm going to give you some bullet points, what you may want to ask them about or to speak to in your letter.
Or insist that they do. I'm at that point.
This is all new to me.
I don't ask anymore. We're beyond asking. But go ahead.
So let me. Sure. Let me. and I thank Ann for bringing it up 2 weeks in a row, and she and some others joined 3 board members last week at a meeting where we got to hear all kinds of disappointing data about state funding of education here in New York. The GEA, the Gap Elimination Adjustment, was a tool put together by the state legislature 5 years ago after the economic crisis to take care of their gap, not our gap, and has since that time reduced state aid to public schools in New York State by $9.5 billion and has taken $20.3 million from this school district over that time frame. At this point in time, in this school year, it's currently reducing our state aid by $2.8 million. We're still receiving aid very similar to what we got in the year 2008-9. Same dollars amounts then. Statewide, that's also similar. Prior to the economic crisis and now, state aid to public is down by 5% of the costs of education. So whether you are in a high needs district where the state used to pay 80% of your costs, they now pay 75% of your costs. Property taxpayers throughout the state. And that's what the GEA has done. It has shifted costs from the state to the local property taxpayer. And then the same governor who does that comes and tells us that we've been raising property taxes too high.
Shame on you. You cannot raise taxes greater than a 2% cap.
So,
right.
Shift the costs and then blame the other guy for the costs. So that's the governor's technique at this point. Ann mentioned that one of the problems for school districts this year is there is no state aid run done by the governor as part of his executive budget, which is a fascinating problem for us and all the other school districts. On March 1, we're due to have calculated our property tax cap. There are some exceptions and changes based on specific costs in your district, so it would be a little more, a little less than 2, whatever. And that law says specifically, thou shalt use the governor's budget state aid runs.
And produce that number. By March 1st.
But there aren't any.
Right.
Now, here's why there aren't any. The governor doesn't produce them because he lied to you. He told you that I'm going to raise state aid $1.1 billion if you give me all the other things I want, or I'm going to raise it $377 million if you don't. But he presented a bill that said state aid next year will be the same as state aid this year. He didn't actually propose a bill that would increase aid $1 statewide. He produced a bill that said it would be exactly the same. You can understand why he didn't want to produce aid runs, because then we would all have right in front of us the obvious number that it's no different than it was last year. So he didn't produce it and figure it out for ourselves. So we're in a bit of a dilemma there. Obviously, we'll submit something. I assume that's what all the school districts will do. They'll submit something and let the state figure out whether we calculated it right or not. But that's the issue with that. Tonight, what we'd like to ask you to do, you've all got devices in front of you.
You meaning a handheld
communication device? Or an iPad, a laptop, whatever you've got, those at home. Got Barbara Lifton, our Assemblywoman's email up there, Senator O'Mara, who represents the bulk of our district, Polio, and was Caroline Ann Danby that Senator Seward represents. But O'Mara represents the bulk of the district. Email them both now and tell them, please eliminate the GEA in its entirety this year.
So, Brad, this is the interactive portion of the program?
This is the interactive portion of the program, yeah.
So, Brad, wants to.
I really want you to.
We're not really
get out
going to
your
move
device
on
and
with the
email
meeting until
while you're here.
everybody. If
See,
you have a
Jay's
device,
getting his
pull it
open,
out.
right? See, Mary, you got yours open? Come on,
Pull it out, and we will.
I'd love to have you. Their emails are up there. Subject line: eliminate the GEA now! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation. I think that'd be a good way to start it. Senator O'Mara, you can say thank you. He's signed on to a Senate bill to eliminate the GEA. Now, please vote for it. Don't just sign on. Please actually put it in the budget and go forward with it. Barbara Lifton has said she is going to sign on to a similar bill in the Assembly. We've not seen it done yet. I expect it will be, but it has not been done yet. Thank her for considering that, but that, again, you need to vote for it. So I'd love to have you just take 3 minutes and send a quick note to each of them. I can see our students have their devices out there. Oh, you didn't bring it right.
I'm shocked the students would
have the right
cell phone,
have the devices
a
in their hand.
smartphone with them, but we do appreciate that they do have them.
Okay, thank you. Glad you do. This is important, and I appreciate what Adam brought forward, a meeting in March. My concern about a March 19th meeting would be it's going to be a little late.
There's only so many.
I know there are so many days. I understand. I understand. And you'll remember last year the School Boards Association got messed up by snow, and their meeting ended up being well into March. Similarly, didn't get done on time.
So just like Senator O'Mara, he can't do March 19th. He's being invited to the Corning one and so forth.
The same, sure, yeah, I understand. Different, yeah. But he's been both Assemblywoman Lifton and Senator O'Mara visited the schools. When was that? The first week in January. First week in January. Had a chance to go to the high school into Fall Creek Elementary, see our classrooms in action. That was helpful, I think, for them to see. And as I understand, he said he'd like to come back. So we intend to get him back again to see classrooms in action. But we need to get them focused on state aid. If we're still where we are at 08, 09 levels, we will unfortunately be reductions in the next 2 months. And we'd prefer not to do that. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes to write a note. I can see people typing away.
Can I just add
Sure.
two things? The SOS election boosters were on Facebook, so you can like us on Facebook, SOS election boosters. And we are posting things regularly, including these addresses, and there are other organizations that are working around the state, so we're posting their links on that. We're posting links to other information. And we also have a petition that's circulating, so you'll find the opportunity for the link on the SOS election boosters. Find a link to that petition on Facebook page. And at this point, I'm trying to connect information with those links so that when you go in and you'll see a little thing about the petition, I'm trying to put a link to, say, the statewide school finance consortium, because they are just a treasure trove of information. They've got just, if you like graphs, they've got lots of graphs. If you really want if you want to really kind of look into it and delve into it and figure out what's there, there's a lot of information there. So anyway, we have a lot of information.
And I've been swamping poor Ann. I send her articles from around the country and around the state on topics. I've been swamping her with them. He's already got,
Well, I'm not surprised at all.
He's already done.
Certainly the genesis for really stopping a meeting and going through this process was really a part of our community conversations around the budget last year, when we did try to make the point again that the capital elimination adjustment was taking a big hit out of the district, and everybody was saying, "What are you talking about? Everything's been fine." And I made the statement that we probably did a too good job of trying to shield the community, shield the students from what was actually happening. $20 million later, it's really, we can't shield the community anymore. And so that's why we had last year go out and and override that artificial numeric pulled out of the sky number last year in order to preserve the district as we wish it to be locally, local control of what we do in Ithaca. So it's this year certainly Brad and Ann and others have been banging the drum on, and we really in Auburn really appreciated seeing really five members of the community that it was an eyes wide open moment, because we had seen all this before. We've been going to the meetings for 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, and it was all old news to us, but certainly we were there. But to have folks that had not really realized what this has done to public education.
Even the legislators are just waking up to it. Upstate New York, that's New York beyond Rockland and Westchester, represents 33% of state aid, foundation aid. 44% of the GEA is taken out of our pockets. We represent 33, but 44% is taken out of our pockets. So recognize that who's the winner, who's the loser. We're clearly the losers. Last year, $340 million was added to the budget for pre-K education. $300 million of it went to the city. $40 million went to the rest of the state. And I think some of our legislators are finally waking up that we're getting the short end here. That clearly upstate is getting way less. And that's why you're finding that our district and some of the rural districts especially are struggling mightily to maintain programs.
And everyone's had a chance at every meeting, whether it's a part of the agenda or not, specifically as part of the agenda, we will be doing budget updates and obviously budget workshops and on to do, because it is likely that we will not get a state aid run. And Dr. Brown, did you have more?
That was it.
Oh, okay. And Dr. Brown mentioned the contingencies of what the governor wants as a part of the deal. The 3 men in the room, the third man that was supported. Of course, that third man during the negotiations and the election of that person, who I don't remember his name, Carl Hastie. He had to come from New York City, and he indeed came from one of the 5 boroughs. But that was to be expected. But certainly, what the governor is going for, the teacher evaluation piece, 50% is coming from a state-wide, state-created test, and then the other 50% would be outside.
35% of it would come from a to-be-named later observer of some sort.
Out of the 50%, a big portion of that would not even be a local building principal.
Right. Somebody
input.
It would be an outside entity to come in and do observations.
We're not defined yet, named yet.
Right. And so you can see why it is the budget is a bit up in the air when really common sense ways to improve teacher evaluations and ways to improve instruction in the classroom are being thrown out for political nonsense, I guess, is about the only way I could describe it.
Well, it makes sense if you're running for president.
Well, I already mentioned what happens to those who wish to be king, and that was last week and last time. So, but we'll not go back there again. But Dr. Brown, I guess, Brad, anything else right now regarding as far as the budget goes? Amanda, you're doing a yeoman's work trying to give us an idea of where that tax levy might be. But Amanda, you said it. Really, over the next 2 years, we should just consider that our state aid will be flat, and that's really how you're recommending and how it's being recommended to you to form our budgets, to just assume that we will get no increase in state aid.
That is correct.
Right. I was just getting response. That is correct, and that's what you are being told as a business official in upstate New
Through all my
York.
associations, through all of the agencies, through the BOCES that support business officials, all the people that do the budget work, everything that's coming our way is telling us for the next 2 years, assume flat state aid rates.
Just as an update on what we're being told, and so everybody is aware.
Isn't that locking in the aid at about what it was 5 years ago?
Yes, 08, 09.
Yeah, to that point. So.
Be the same.
So
plan on the money that you got 5 years ago, even though expenses.
Oh no, the expenses are our fault. That's the government.
Yeah, right, exactly. I tell you, Dr. Brown, this sounds like farming more and more all the time. I mean, I thought I left that a while ago, but that's why I'm getting a headache now. But I wanted to make that point, Amanda, and that's what we're being told. And so when you sift through everything, that's the bottom line. And that's how we'll have to plan going forward. We do have, we do have 75% of our budget, Brad, approximately, is locally supported. Correct?
That's correct.
We still have local control over what we do, and so that's why we are who we are.
Control up to the tax cap limit, unless you ask for more.
Unless we choose to override, but we'll pass that hurdle when we come to it. But anyway, and there will be a calculation of that tax levy limit at some point. Amanda, do you have any idea? I mean, assuming zero, when the finance committee would get that? Or?
Our finance committee meets not next Monday, but the following Monday. And I should have a preliminary estimation at that time.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it. Just as an update, since I think that's kind of what we were doing. Dr. Brown, you're good? We're good. Okay, we're going to go on to regular school district business, and LACS apparently is going on a trip.
Yes, but they aren't here tonight, so they may have already gone. We may have to go to postpone until the next meeting, or if they come in a little later, maybe we look at that item later tonight, but the folks who are going to speak to the board aren't here.
I mean, Dr. Brown, we can just, pass things without even really considering it, can't we?
We'd rather you not.
Okay.
I guess it's probably just a miscommunication in when they were supposed to come.
Okay.
So,
maybe next meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's fine. We spent more time with the superintendent's report than reported on the agenda, so I think that's fine.
But the folks for the next item, anyway.
I would hope so. And Matt, you're going to give us an update on English as a second language learning?
Yes. Slides will be up in a second bit. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. Tonight I have Lydia Coyle with us and Teresa Suchet, who is a English as a second language teacher at DeWitt Middle School, and Jeff Tomasic, elementary principal, one of our ESL elementary schools. Tonight we are going to just an update on our programming for English as a second language students. For several different reasons. We thought it would be really a great time to talk about some of the amazing things that happen with our student population. And so just to provide an overview, provide some information, but also hear from our practitioners about what it looks like in the schools for these students. A couple other reasons that we wanted to speak tonight. Actually, the budget part, I think, both on the state level and the local side, I think are really important to focus on. So we'll get to this a little bit later, but I just wanted to preview that there are some new regulations from the Board of Regents regarding ESL. That's another reason we wanted to speak tonight and share some of what we know about it. The thing is this is even though we think the goals of these new regulations are great, that they'll really help our students. They are definitely the classic unfunded mandate. And so when I was with Amanda at Bell Sherman, with their PTA about the budget, parents said, just give me one example of an unfunded mandate. And this was just the latest one to pop in my head. And so we'll talk a little bit about what the state, some of the new expectations from the state. And then lastly, again, this is more local budget, but we wanted to share a brief outline of idea we have regarding not a huge budget initiative, but something that we think will help us grow our ESL program. So if we go to the next slide. So we just wanted to quickly do our acronym check because you will probably hear some tonight, and so we just wanted to quickly go over what these are. ESL is English as a Second Language. ESOL is English for Speaker of other languages. Excuse me, I'm goofing that up too. ELL is an acronym you hear more and more lately, and we'll probably start shifting to using that. That's English language learners. SIFE is students with interrupted formal education. And so you'll hear that phrase. Those are students and families that are relocating to Ithaca, oftentimes from refugee camps from around the world. And LEP is yet another acronym you hear, and that is Limited English Proficiency. And that's a phrase that the state uses in deciding whether students receive services or not. All right, so just a quick, I'm sort of viewing tonight as part one about ESL. We want to do a part two later where we get more deeply into data around student achievement students, but we just wanted to provide a quick overview. We have 245 identified students. That's 5% of our student population, with 37 languages represented. The highest language represented by far is Chinese, with Spanish and Karen. The next three. If you're not familiar with Karen, it's an ethnic minority, and so they families have come from refugee situations and have been placed in Ithaca. Is one of the many places around the country that they've been. And then the rest of the languages obviously are sort of represented by 1 or 2 or 3 students. So about also how we serve the students. We have our ESL students are clustered in 3 of our elementary buildings. They are clustered in Northeast Elementary, Bell Sherman Elementary, and BJM. Northeast is pretty much a self-sustaining program, so almost all of their students come from their own school zone. Bell Sherman is almost like Northeast, but they also have some students coming from the Caroline area, and then all the rest of the students: Enfield, South Hill, Fall Creek, and Enfield, if they qualify for ESL, they would be bused by the district to BJM, which is our 3rd ESL school. At the middle school level, DeWitt is our ESL building, and then obviously Ithaca High School. And we also have 4 ESL students at LICS. Just to talk about staffing really quickly, just in terms of teachers, at the 3 elementary buildings we have 3 teachers each, and then at ESL teachers and at the high school we have 2 serving this number of students. So we just wanted to then talk about what our program looks like in terms of the levels the state expects us to serve, and Jeff and Teresa are going to sort of just walk us through ESL programming looks like at the elementary level and at the middle level. So Lydia's going to first talk about our levels of students.
Very quickly, you can see what the current levels that get placed at, and they get services and support based on that level, which is there's testing that's done each year to see where they are, and then we give them support number of minutes per week, depending on the level. Part of the new regulations that are coming from the state are going to expand the levels. One of the things that teachers see is that kids spend a lot of time at that intermediate level, and so the state has redefined and made 5 levels so that we can more accurately see where the students are developing and more efficiently and effectively support their growth through those 5 levels. So that'll be part 2. We'll talk about those later. So that's just sort of the different levels of students that you'll see. I have something from the high school. They couldn't be here. Do you want me to start with that? Because this is just sort of a reading of what, and then these guys will talk more specifically. So the high school ESL teachers could be here today, but they did want to give a bit of a statement. There are 32 ESL students in grades 9 through 12. They are a diverse group. There are some advanced students that have very strong academic background, and there are other SIFE students, the student with interrupted formal education students, that are just beginning to learn English, yet they're at a high school level, or have little or no academic experience. So they work with a wide range of students. They take part in a standalone ESOL program in which they're taught or co-taught the Common Core standards, as well as the New York State Learning Standards for ESL. Depending on their level of proficiency, where we saw those levels there, they are mandated to have 1 to 3 periods of ESOL support a day. The ESOL teachers, in addition to teaching that ESOL curriculum in an ESOL class, they and the ESPs that we have working with ESOL support students' academic work in content area by pushing into classrooms and providing extra support there. So that's just.
And I just wanted to jump in and also say we're really happy to have Teresa and Jeff with us tonight. Our ESL teachers overall are our students, and I probably should share that many are taking a Burmese language class on Tuesday nights, and so the current students are from Burma, and they shared with me a welcome phrase that I should use tonight, and of course I'm not going to embarrass myself and try that, but I thought that should be shared that on just a regular Tuesday night, many of them are Burmese, which is a very noble thing to be doing. So Jeff, maybe, or we'll go down from high school to middle. Sure. With Teresa.
I met you at middle school, 2 colleagues with Carol Hoffman and Mary Jo Wood. She's a teaching assistant for the ESOL program. We look at state regulations which dictate the amount of time students were tested, our minutes that they're mandated to receive. We also take into consideration the language and content area instruction support that will make our diverse population successful, given the fact that they have to also be engaged with the Common Core and will be college and career ready, just like the population. And we also consider the need to work in more creative ways with some of our students who have interrupted formal education, which is the SIFE population that we keep talking about. Our students, we have a program that's 30 students, and they speak about 15 different languages. We also serve students who receive an additional 2 years of support after they test out of the program, so sort of 40-plus students. And again, our students include refugees, immigrants, children of visiting scholars. We also have students with IEPs and SIFE students we're talking about. So the program itself is written for up to 2 periods a day for beginners. So the amount of minutes, of course, is based on their level of English proficiency. So the beginners receive the instruction, and then you move on up. Advanced students receive 1 period of day of standalone instruction. While many of the other students are receiving what we call academic support, our ESOL students are receiving content area support to help them in science and social studies, which is critical for them because they're very heavy language based and they need to have a lot of vocabulary, so they need that extra support in those areas. In addition, we work as ESOL staff in the classroom with the students, pushing into science and social studies as needed. We also make an effort to cluster our ESOL students because we have to use our resources wisely. We can't be in all classes at all times, so if we cluster them, they can get support from their other ESOL colleagues, students, and being with native language speakers. The special programs, so I think we're doing something really great at DeWitt because we really try to tailor the programming to students. So the SIFE students who need interrupted education, for example, are given more private teaching settings led by ESOL teachers or the teaching assistant. Last year, just as an example of something that we did that was different this year, we had some students who were really complaining because they weren't able to get high school credit like some of their native speakers were. They wanted to take an help me with this, Earth Science. They wanted to get that Earth Science credit before going to high school. So we developed something where we have a very small group of students who take Earth Science with the regular students, but then are pulled out to see if we can get them that extra credit that they want to work for and deserve. And so we try to do that in addition to all the other programming, which is with the advanced and the intermediate and beginner students in the content outside with us. Anyway, that's a little idea of what we do at DeWitt.
All right, so at Northeast School we have the same state requirements in the way of meeting the needs of the kids. So what we really focus on is serving our ESL kids in the regular ed classroom as much as possible. There's an incredible amount of language, vocabulary development, experiences happening right in the classroom. The ESL kids are an integral key part of it. What you'll see a lot at our school is instead of pulling kids out for standalone services, that we'll have more of a model where we'll have the ESL teacher and the gen ed teacher co-teaching a class, or perhaps the gen ed teacher might lead a lesson, then the kids break out into groups. ESL teacher might have all 4 or 5 or his or her ESL students, but perhaps 1 or 2 other students, maybe they've been absent or somehow have gotten a little bit behind, or maybe they're not behind, maybe they're actually ahead in some way, but we're going to pull them into that group. Groups are really flexible, so there's obviously minute requirements we have to meet. So we really try and have the kids' needs served in the regular classroom. When they are pulled out, one thing that's worked really well at our school is that a lot of times our teachers will pre-teach content, and the next week they're going to be studying the American Revolution. Our ESL teachers will actually pre-teach some of the vocabulary and concepts and content to the kids, so that following week, when they go back into class, it helps level the playing field. So the kids, because a lot of times they're obviously coming from a different country where they're not going to be studying the American Revolution so much, so they need that little bit of leg up. But we feel like that model works a lot better than reteaching. We much prefer to pre-teach and get them ahead of the game. There are similarities, so I won't be redundant. The ESL program is a great part of the school. In terms of what we need support, I think we're going to need help from Liddy and Matt. As the state regs change, we're more than happy to implement the state regs and do what we need to do, but we want to do it in a way that keeps the integrity of our program. So support from them to make that happen.
Before we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to also recognize Barbara Bergman's in the audience behind you there, and she's the family liaison at Ithaca High School who works with ESL families. And go over there, please, at any time when you want.
There's just a lot of work that goes on. You orient new people when they come into the community, and they're coming from a different town, but now you're talking about other countries. Maybe their kids were in school, maybe they weren't. Something I hope this is okay with you for me to put out there, something that I've seen a big change over the years, and I think it's something that the board should know about, because it's not just about teaching postdocs and professors' kids that people are bringing here for their United States experience. Okay? A lot of refugee kids, a lot of kids who aren't coming from educational backgrounds, a lot of families that are starting over. We've also seen, I'll say personally, the 10 years that I've been in the high school, we also seem to be getting a lot more children, I'll just say, with issues. So maybe it's not as easy to get services in the countries that they're coming from, and it makes it that much harder to figure out how to help the kids. So that's another piece that I think you guys need to know about.
Thank you. So we have some challenges with the program because of some new regulations that were passed by the Board of Regents. But before starts kind of walking us through some of those. We've also really been asked by some community members and some families to the fact that we really offer some amazing services and we have amazing teachers in ESL, to look at the way we identify students. Not necessarily that we're making mistakes in identification, but that the process has been confusing for families, and that they're not really sure they understand sort of what's happening while the process is taking place. And some other things have come up that have sort of caused us to, and also there's a shift. Lori Grustawa in charge of ESL, and that's transferred to me. So with the change, we're sort of looking at some of our practices. This is coinciding with these new regs, and so Liddy has been going to a few more meetings than I have regarding the new regs. So she's going to walk us through some of these. And again, we welcome and embrace what Liddy is about to describe. These are just kind of in the nick of. We're still awaiting more information. But I will reiterate, and this is something when we are writing our emails to legislators, this is truly a classic unfunded mandate, because we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to try to meet regs, and we are figuring it out on our own. But Liddy, walk us through some of that.
I'm new to this, and so if I make mistakes, I'm going to let people that are no, you're still here. Good. So people can chime in. The new regulations that are out and will be in effect this fall. We actually really clarify a lot of the processes and supports for students that have other challenges going on. So we really are excited to implement these, but it is going to be a challenge. The intake/identification process of students in our district, and then from that it triggers other parts of the process. The regulations are helping us to see that we really need to increase our system and clarify our system for the intake and identification process of students. We are doing in anticipation of these regulations, we're doing an internal review of all our home language forms throughout the district. So we are putting our eyes on every single one of them to see how the process has gone, how we're going through that process, students that get screened, that don't get screened using a state test called the NICETEL. And that is the initial screening process. So we're working to systematize this. Part of this system is, I'm not going to try saying it again, part of what we're working on is really making sure that this is a respectful process for all families, that they understand the process, and that we're treating everyone equally in how we go through the process. This is going to require, both through our desire and the regulations, that we have differently qualified personnel to do the initial intake, work with the parents throughout the process. So right now, Tom does a wonderful job intake for every single child that comes in. When a student, it's indicated that there's another language spoken, we need other qualifications of personnel to be a part of that process right from the beginning. So we're really working on that. It's going to be a big shift, but that's the part that's unfunded. So
that's to be in place.
Yep. So we're working on that. That is a large part, but that's where we start our work with students, and we want to start it in the right way, get the right information, have in-depth conversations with the family, learning about their health history, about their education history, about issues in home language, not just in learning English, if there are those things going on. It sort of leads to how we work with students that qualify both for special education services and ESOL services. And there are new regulations that help clarify both the intake process and then also or when students might exit ESOL services but maintain IEP services. And we're still looking for more guidance from the state on that, and then working on how that works within our district. So I'm working with Sheila on that, with the CSE chair, so that they understand the new regulations, so that we can all be on the same page, so we can support students most effectively. third part is professional development, and this again is a state regulation that we're very happy about, but it is also unfunded. The regulations have become very specific for how much of the teacher's total professional development needs to be focused on ELLs, English language learners. So all teachers need to have 15% of all in a year needs to be focused on ELLs. So any classroom teacher that might be in contact with students needs some background. I just spent the day in Syracuse learning a lot about that, and so it was really helpful, and ESOL teachers were there too to turnkey that. ESOL teachers, 50% of all their professional development in a year needs to be focused on ELLs and supporting ELLs. So we've been given some very specific guidelines of what we need to do to support teachers. We are working with OCM BOCES with that. They have a lot of great support and specialists that are going to help us really make that PD effective.
So in terms of some next steps, Liddy will talk a little bit about this Blueprint for Success model that actually is a funded mandate, in that we don't have to pay to be a part of it. The opportunity that we've just embarked upon as an ESL team, and then I'll finish with just talking about some potential collaboration that we want to initiate with BOCES regarding this.
So in your Dropbox is a document that New York State wrote, which is the Blueprint for ELL Success. There are 8 principles that a statewide framework for expectations for districts, for teachers, for schools. They're very broad reaching. Since then, the state has come out with more specific specifics of the Common Core Bilingual Initiative and some progressions that are very specific for those different 5 levels for students at each grade level. But what we are most excited about is 15 teachers, administrators from elementary and secondary level are in a graduate course through Stanford University. It's an online course. It is free, and it's a very rigorous course, and our goal is to create a strong blueprint implementation plan for our district. So taking that blueprint and saying, okay, what's this going to look like in Ithaca? What is our How are we going to implement it? How are we going to support teachers? So we are really privileged to be a part of this very rigorous online course. We are also going to go to Albany and meet with the professors. They're flying in from Stanford to meet with us to talk about our plan, and then how do we roll that out to the district. So it's an exciting opportunity. We're spending a lot of time online, reading, watching videos, turning in papers, getting them nerve-wracking, but we really think that this was a great opportunity that we've been able to get. Oh, I will say that we, in addition to the 15 staff members from Ithaca, 3 of the ELL specialists from OCM BOCES asked to be on our team for this graduate course, so we're hoping they're going to make us look good.
We were disappointed that they weren't flying our team out to Stanford.
Right.
So we wanted to conclude just with some thinking. You know, Dr. Brown talks about year-round budgeting and how we're always trying to sort of think of meeting new challenges. And so we just wanted to share some initial thinking about we will be looking for new funding for, even in a difficult budget year. But I think our new way of thinking about this position probably reflects some of the budget realities, but hopefully will spur some innovation. This is really going after supporting classroom teachers, which I think can't be said enough. Like this isn't all about someone like Teresa going to a lot more workshops or getting coaching in how she teaches. This is about the classroom teachers who work with these students on a daily basis that receive this training. And I think from elementary and like high school classroom teachers who don't have this background, for them to have more professional development, I think will be really powerful. But of course, with these new regulations, we're sort of left to figure it out. And so, our initial thinking was, well, we're not going to be able to do this. But then when we started thinking a little bit further, we thought even though we obviously represented within TSC BOCES, we represent the largest number of English language learner students. We know that every other district in our region organization also has these students and will have the same regs that they have to meet as well. And so we have pitched this to other districts in our BOCES region, and most of them have signed on for paying for a position. We're thinking this position is actually not an administrative position, but a teacher position. Someone who really helps provide and coordinate professional development. It's not to evaluate teachers or supervise the program necessarily, but to help support the program and really help teachers learn and grow. So our thinking around this is, just to get down to brass tacks for budget purposes, that ICSD pays for 70% of this position, the other districts pay for 30%. And we also know that working through BOCES, that first, I forget exactly, like the first $30,000 of the salary is aidable. So we're looking at trying to do this in the most affordable way possible. But we feel pretty strongly that having someone, we're hoping that it's a teacher who's willing to apply for this, or a teacher in the region, I should say, that's willing to apply for this position. Having someone who has both that classroom experience with the ability to also work with adults will really help our classroom teachers, both in our district and our neighboring districts, grow in terms of differentiating for students. How to provide that, but that can really change a class. And it sounds cliche, probably saying it sometimes, but it really would benefit all the students in a class. What I found before coming here as a principal in 2 schools that had very large ESL populations, and I always found that the strategies those teachers benefited every single student in my school, no matter where they were coming from. And so our hope is that this provides some extra muscle to our professional development, also having some of our neighboring districts help fund it. So with that, we just wanted to conclude. We do want to come back with more information about this graduate level class, and I should probably share that even though I swore off any more grad school a couple years ago when I finished my doctorate, that I have signed up for this class, and I love your reminders of the things I have to do. That makes me keep but we do think it's great that we were able to take this class with the folks from Stanford. But we wanted to conclude with Q&A. One of the big reasons Jeff and Teresa and Barbara are here is they'll be the ones to really answer your questions. But we're excited about this transition. We're excited about the energy that's going in ESL, and we know that teachers are hungry for making the program even stronger, and community members really want to push and grow the program as well. So with that, we're open to questions.
Questions? Brad, then Tom.
I mean, the first thing I think of is, what's your integration with music? I would think a language without a language. What's your integration of these students in that program, and then also phys ed and in art? What training is there? Professional development for the instructors in those areas? Are they participating?
Well, that 15% is for any teacher that works with kids.
Right.
So it would be PE, and it would be. But you guys can speak to what.
Are any of them participating? I guess would be the question.
I'll just speak. I know ESL teachers currently, like when they're trying to support the development of language, they'll integrate lots of movement, lots of art to help teach language. So that's something they do naturally for their training.
Actually, the ESOL students participate in those classes just like any other student. And even we just have a student who is going to start violin tomorrow, and she speaks almost no English whatsoever, but as you said, it's a common language, so they actually are fully in the curriculum. And it's actually a nice time because they can.
Great. Our schools with ESL populations, teacher who has these students in their classrooms will have there's no opt-out from the PD. So they will receive it. One of the good things about the way we do ESL here is that these schools have a long-standing tradition of having this population cluster in their buildings, and so I know then there's kind of a long-standing history of what makes a successful PE class for students who have limited English and so on and so forth. But yeah, there's not an opt-out regarding the PD, so that's one of the reasons why we think this shared position could really help us.
Elder.
seems like this would be an area that's pretty tough for parents to keep abreast of and to navigate if they have their own learning issues. And in the conversation so far, I hadn't heard much about or the invitation of parents to help go along with what the hell is going on, right? But you're going to need a translator to the communities from which they come from.
Yeah.
So
the part of the blueprint, and that's I'd sort of glossed over, the blueprint has many specific parts about having the as an integral part of it, and that initial screening and conversation. The regulations have really clarified exactly what you're saying, that we have to involve the parents from the beginning and at the very least ask them how they want to be communicated with. And then there's a specific increase in the number of times that ESOL teachers meet with parents. So the state has said, yeah, we know you're doing good things and you're meeting with parents, but we're going to be sure that you meet with them at least one more time. So we didn't speak to it here because this was an overview, but it is a huge part of the new regulations and the blueprint and the course that we're taking. There's a whole session on how we do that.
But Eldred, also one of our early goals is to have, and obviously there's challenges with this, but to have some community work around. So we'll be spending some time revamping the intake and identification process, and so an initial goal for us is to work with and share with some community members what those changes are and how that either may impact their family or some of neighbors or friends, because that process, while it's very, very well intentioned, in many ways well done, we still found confusing to some folks, and we really want to try to reduce that drastically. So a very initial first step is that this spring we get out and try to explain that better.
Connor?
Dr. Wendell, you had mentioned a program at LICS, but it only has 4 students in it. I have 2 questions. What does that look like? And you had mentioned after testing out of an English proficiency exam, 2 years of support. What does that look like? I am assuming that's not just at the middle school level, but at all levels. So what are those 2?
I'll defer to Liddy with the LACS since she's worked a little bit more closely with that.
So the LACS program looks just like what you heard. So there are fewer students there, but they are at different levels, so they qualify for a different amount of minutes. So that, no matter where a student is a constant. So if they're at a certain level of proficiency, they're going to receive ESOL services support from a qualified ESOL teacher. They'll have an ESOL classroom period where they will receive support at the level that they're at, in addition to getting push-in support in their content area.
And then, so what does the support look like?
So, it really depends on the students that move into that level. That's called proficiency, but we do keep a record of students that are labeled by either a P1, which means they are proficient but only the first year out of the program, or a P2. And then we really just consider them students that are on being monitored, and that means we have to check in with their teachers, talk to their team, when they have team meetings, we talk about those students. And then some of the students that I talked about for not Earth Arts, but Earth Science, they actually also happen to be Proficiency 1 or Proficiencies 2 students that have requested additional support to get those extra credits, so we that way. So I think it probably looks different in every school, but we sort of keep them on our radar and provide additional support as might be required.
At the high school, some of it is reminding content teachers during the course of the year that you do still have some students in your room that aren't in ESL classes, but you tell everybody in the beginning of the year, teachers get 125 new students. It's hard to remember that then 3 months later, so reminders go out around testing. Monitor kids are asked if they want to come take their exams with the ESL kids. They're still allowed certain accommodations, extra time. Maybe they would rather take the global in the classroom with other kids, with the ESL teachers, and not have to move if they don't finish at the end of the exam and then get walked over to another room, just stay in one place. So it's a little different because of the testing stuff that also goes on at the high school. But the ESL teachers are always looking out for those kids, and some of them want to come to the ESL room, some of them don't. Some of them say, I'm fine, I don't need your help anymore. Some of them keep coming back for help.
Other questions? Jay?
So if this population is approximating 5% of our students, do we track these kids for graduation, independent of other factors?
We do.
And so I'm just curious, do ESOL kids sort of track the same kinds of graduation? Or I guess, are they representative of the general student body, or are they more motivated or less motivated, or
the one
less
of the issues,
successful or more successful?
One of the issues with the graduation rate data for this specific group is incredibly variable based on the year and the number of students who are, at that fourth year of high school. One of the things that happens is that, we've been talking about students who reach proficiency. So we still kind of keep tracking them in a way, but the data I was looking at today, students who reach proficiency, let's say when they're in DeWitt, they're no longer, in this category of students, and those are students that most likely are probably doing well. So students is probably fair. If the number of students actually gets smaller by Ithaca High School time, like the number of students in ESL is pretty large. Jeff, you have how many at Northgate? And so the high school has 32. And so anyway, it could just be like 8 or 9 students a year who we're looking at graduation rates from, and that can go from 88% to 44% just for the sake of like the state that kids are sort of coming in with in terms of the education they receive before coming to us. But I have all that in an Excel file, and I'll send it to Danielle to put in your Dropbox, and you can look at it over the last 5 years. I just got a little bit behind and didn't get it to you beforehand, but we have that.
And there are sometimes accommodations permitted for graduation, but for at least for testing, apparently, and
extra time.
Yeah.
Separate location if they want.
For any level of ESOL student, including the ones that are proficient for 2 years afterwards.
But those are but accommodations are made for testing, but certainly there's not any other accommodations made for graduating. It's the same. Requirements.
Regions, etc.
And issues,
same amount.
And that's a big issue.
But part of the new regulations, and they just come out with like 2 or 3 lines. The state says we're going to do something about that.
You found that helpful?
Yeah.
Great team. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we appreciate Albany every day.
We're looking forward to more.
Judy, go
Are
ahead.
there any exemptions from tests? At what proficiency level do you have to be? I mean, if you just come and can't read or anything.
In elementary school, they're exempt from the ELA for the first year only.
Okay.
Math they have to take even if they come on Friday and the
With all
state.
that reading?
We're allowed to get translators for them.
Oh,
They
okay.
can have a translator with them for the math test.
Okay. And this is true in high school also? If
I
they
would
just
assume
come?
so, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. And that's pretty standard beyond New York. Like I think every state is no child left behind sort of forced that you get that first year and then everybody's taking the test.
There are some things that we're coming up with, some students, some rules about, and don't quote me on this, but if a student has actually gone to their class for 2 straight years and has a fabulous attendance record, is passing the class and doing well in the class, and regents a couple of times, there's something about a certain number of waivers. The teachers are trying to figure this out, like, as we speak. something around that, but easy it's not.
And Pat?
I wanted to start by saying that a couple of years ago when I was able to accompany a class to Kids Discover the Trail, it was at the Cornell Plantations, and it was with an ESL class from Northeast, and it was an amazing, amazing experience, both talking with the kids and talking with the teachers who were so incredibly creative and excited and positive about this educational experience. And it points out once again what myriad challenges everyday life throws at our Ithaca teachers and how well they rise to that. And I just want to, again, say my appreciation for this. Just speaking to, as a question, I think, as you mentioned, unfunded mandates, I had been perusing this blueprint for English language learners that was put in our Dropbox, and your talk put it into context so I could see where it was fitting in the district. I have a specific question about Standard 4. Districts and students recognize that bilingualism and biliteracy are assets and provide opportunities for all students to earn a seal of biliteracy upon obtaining a high school diploma by providing all students with, and I won't read all the bulleted points, but it sounds like we are no longer simply responsible for providing English language instruction and content instruction in other languages so that students can get a seal of biliteracy. Am I reading this wrong? Am I reading? Is it expensive?
The blueprint and the are two slightly different things. So the blueprint is a course that's coming out of Stanford that kind of has the ideals of a ELL program. But I do know in the new regs, and I feel like I'm in a good, but there is a provision in there for bilingual education, but you have to have a certain number of which in one school to have to offer bilingual, and our numbers are nowhere near.
You have to have 20 students in the same school with the same language to offer a bilingual class. So we do not offer that. So the actual blueprint for ELL success is a document that New York State created. It was all these sort of like big principles. The Stanford professors have taken that blueprint and tried to actionalize it. Is that the word? They're like trying to how do we make that work in our district? And then there's the regulations that actually speak to this at all.
Except there's that one reg that does talk about if you reach a certain number of students, you should offer bilingual. When we saw that, we immediately,
so we're waiting for further clarification.
It's a laudable goal, keeping in mind that state aid is at 2008 levels. I would just like also to note that I discovered an acronym in these blueprints that you did not have up there. It's LOTE. Languages other than English.
There we go.
If I could just say, as a teacher, I could just speak to this concept of bilingualism and trying to make sure that when we have a child that speaks another language, we don't interpret it as the child having some kind of a deficit. As an ESL teacher, to hear this kind of language coming out is actually quite joyful. That's one of the things. People think we're ESL teachers, we want students to learn ESL, and we're really promoting students to learn their first language, and that simply is not the case. And part of our work with content areas teachers is to help them see that these children are bringing a lot to the learning context, culturally and linguistically, and that they need to be seen as resources. So I agree, it's a laudable goal, but it's also a different way of looking at ELL students that's important.
It's actually wonderful when students don't lose their first language and remain bilingual. I'm just trying to figure out the role of a school district, especially in a district like this, in providing that level of instruction.
Well, it's not
at the content level. Okay.
Yeah, and with 15 languages at the list.
But it's also like a mindset, and it's a shift to, we're not just trying to teach you English, we're trying to teach you to be bilingual. And I went to a day-long workshop and this is a quote I came back with, which really struck me. Monolingualism is the illiteracy of the 21st century. So a professor at University of said that, and so that's something to think about, and that we need to really elevate both the home language and the learning of English.
I am the spouse of a man who learned English in kindergarten because he English at home, as did his brother, and the mindset of the time was, you stupid immigrants don't know how to speak English, not you know that you are, I wish languages that my husband speaks, and so does our daughter, who was raised monolingually and resents it terribly. So thank you.
You must have been reading my mind. I was going to ask about the culture question. And in this district, not to put too fine a point on it, but you have certain ethnic groups who are dominant in their culture, right at Northeast, and to a certain extent Bell Sherman. And those kids are lionized to a certain extent, right? You say they're the future. And you have the same language speakers from different parts of the ethnic milieu down at BJM, right? They're from the ethnic groups within that culture who might have had to flee, right? Those are the interrupted learners. And the parents I talk to representing those groups make it very clear. They feel their kids are oppressed, right? They feel their kids are being penalized for actually coming to the table with those languages. So, culture issue within our group that we always have to be conscious of, and Matt, you have to answer this question much more broadly than this, but how are you going to know the PD is working in this instance? How will we judge the success of professional development in this case?
Well, I think one of the ways is that this is purely qualitative, but that when we're working with these families and these students, we hear and see a lot less of what you're saying. So we had some different ESL teachers talk with the EILC. And Jen Heiss, one of the high school teachers who couldn't be here tonight, said, to them one of the issues that they see in the high school program is there are students who, their family may have been in America for a few generations now, but because there is a language spoken at home that is different than English, they have to take this test. They don't pass the test, or they don't reach proficiency, so then they're put into the ESL program. And by the time they reach high school, some of those students, and Jen she's a great teacher, but she was very honest about some of these kids don't want to come to her class anymore. Some of these families, when they're told, because we do the clustering at the elementary level, which has many benefits, but when they're told, hey, your child didn't meet this proficiency level, so you're going to go to a different school, even though you might live next door to the school, but this is the way we do it. That's posed some issues too. So we and a lot of times we're talking about some of the same families with this, and so some of the mistrust, kind of comes from that. And so I always think kind of the first step with this is an openness about it. And we've been nothing but open about it, I think, when we started getting this feedback. And the teachers have blown me away with their openness about it instead of being defensive about it. When I've approached them with some of the parent or family concerns, they basically said, when can I come to a meeting? Talk about it instead of kind of running away from it. So our hope, and one of the things we initially did, and this was about 4 to 6 weeks ago, is we brought our local regional ESL person from Syracuse came down, and we have started some of the conversations with her too. So I guess to answer your question, how do we know the PD is working, is that high school student who's been in the program kindergarten, maybe. How they feel about it now. Hopefully, a few years down the road, a high school student like that high school student feels a lot differently, feels more positively about it. That family feels more positively about the way we do the program. we also hopefully see shifts that the students are passing out of the program at a higher rate too. So that's obviously a more tangible piece. But things that we're being really open about as a group, we're not. But the flip side to that is these are requirements that we have to do, and so that's one of the things that that we talk about whenever I have a chance. And these are very well-intentioned requirements. These requirements are there so oftentimes kids like these would be sort of swept under the proverbial rug, like their families weren't going to speak out, and they wouldn't receive the extra help, maybe because no one was going to ask or advocate for it. So I think New York has some really stringent requirements for students like this because they never want to see that happen. That being said, we're kind of seeing like the unintended consequence, maybe if you will, of some folks with this, and so that's why we're undergoing some of the improvement work we are. Sorry, long answer, and I probably wasn't being super clear with a definitive answer, but it's something we're being really open about. Teresa?
I'm not really sure exactly because I wasn't part of that meeting, but I'm from a Puerto Rican background and I had Spanish spoken in my home, and sometimes when I see children of a similar ethnic background that have been ESL for a very long time, when English is in fact their strong language, it is not a comfortable place for me as a person or a practitioner. And I think what's nice about the new regulations is they're actually giving us more options for exiting students than they had previously. So they don't have to pass the NICE flatness, which is the main state exam. There are other avenues for letting these students move on. And if they do need help in an area and it's not related to language learning, then they can focus on that. And they don't have to necessarily be in ESOL for support. And then the other end of it, which is when you interview parents to test them, that's also being revamped and rediscussed about, because we don't want it to be subtractive, right? So if you have a parent who's speaking another language, as in my current home, does that necessarily mean the child must be tested? Well, we need to interview and figure out what that process is. So entering and exiting the program hopefully will be more fluid? No. Something.
Can I say one more thing? Eldred, speaking to how will we know the PD works, and I think it was almost a decade ago, equity workshop with Sean over at GIAC, and we were talking about, we use the word normalization. We were talking actually about children's books, and I was really looking for children's books where it was just part of the book. It wasn't a book about Kwanzaa, and we were talking about how do we normalize that, and
sure.
It was in that context. But I think the normalization of bilingualism and diverse cultures in classrooms, not just being celebrated, but it's an integral part of classrooms and classroom instruction and integrated curriculum. So that it's normalized, so that of course we have bilingual. Not the celebration of Hispanic History Month. Bilingualism is a part of life, and that's what I will feel we've gotten a lot of success.
Barbara?
On the flip side, the professional development for all the teachers, one of the ways to see that things are working is if more of the other teachers were asking questions. More of the other teachers were coming by and saying, "Oh, do you know anything? Is there anything else I need to know?" If more of that was happening, then that professional development, I think, would be working. The professional development isn't happening yet, right? It's something that needs to come. We're not, ESL teachers have been asking for a long time, at least I've heard it, that they would love to be able to do trainings for the other teachers, that they would love to be able to, and exactly what Matt's saying about they really believe that the methods they're using would be great for all in all classes to be shared that way.
Thanks, Barbara. Anything else? Any other questions? Great discussion. Great update. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see one policy and a regulation.
Is that to me?
Sure, Sean, if you want to, we'll just wrap up this first reading pretty quickly.
So trying to keep us moving so we can adjourn the meeting after this. Policy 6830 is the expense reimbursement, and policy 6830-R is the expense reimbursement regulation. The policy committee took a look at these policies at the suggestion of Nora Starr, one of our claims auditors, was asking that we make a couple changes to the policy, and we felt like we shouldn't wait until we got to the 6,000 series, that we could do them immediately. And a couple of changes are as follows. On the actual policy 6830, you can see it, there is a segment in the third paragraph that talks about board and or superintendent attendance at conference meetings. As it's stated currently according to NISBA's recommendations, that the board by majority vote shall determine and approve which meetings and conferences may be attended by board members and the superintendent of schools, and which district funds are being expended. That was one of the recommendations. There's a caveat there saying if the board wishes to have the board president or superintendent authorize these meetings, that we can change that paragraph to modify that to do so. So that's a question for the board at some point in time, how we want to proceed there. Much more substantially in terms of changes would be a couple of things. One, we were asked to see folks would be reimbursed not by per diem per day, but by per diem per meal. And I hope that makes sense. So, for example, rather than saying I'm not going to have any lunch and I'm not going to have any breakfast and spend my $60 in New York on dinner, if the federal regulations say you get $12 for breakfast and $20 for lunch and for dinner, then you only have $40 for dinner. You don't have the amalgamation of all that money throughout the day.
And $60 gets a hamburger.
In New York, you may get ketchup.
Why not? Right. And maybe a water if you have.
That was one of the changes that we were recommended. We were recommended to have that change. We were also change that says, for example, if we purchase a dinner along with a meeting, that we would not be reimbursing for meals in lieu of that. So, for example, if you're at a conference and you buy a dinner, then you're going to that dinner. We're not going to reimburse meals that are outside that dinner.
Eat the rubber ticket.
Right.
If something is provided.
And so you'll see that one in the regulation. That will be under the meals section. It says meals will not be reimbursed if purchased as part of the conference meeting or attendance. That's a new item. And if I'm not mistaken, Pat and Judy, I think those are the only two major economic changes in terms of policy beyond that paragraph. For the most part, it's our current policy. We're just trying to tighten up when we reimburse folks and how that reimbursement looks like. And so,
it helps the audit committee in reporting their.
Well, now it helps the audit committee. We're also thinking, how can we, if we're under tight financial constraints, then we should also be very clear about what we're going to reimburse as part of our professional development to conferences and the like.
Sure.
I would imagine the board, one of the main conversations is we had in the policy committee meeting, should the board have to vote by majority vote every time the superintendent goes to a conference? We weren't sure what that language looks like. It seems to be a little bit excessive. Maybe there's a monetary amount that we say on there. If it's above whatever value, then we want to vote. But otherwise, we sort of assume it's to the superintendent's discretion. We're not talking about this superintendent. We're talking about policy for years to come. So that
what is it now?
Right now, there is not really a policy in place about deciding how funds get spent. So that was one of the questions as well. There is a policy. There is a travel reimbursement policy. There's not a travel authorization policy, if that makes sense. So that was policy 6830 with the regulations.
Right.
I'd put the parenthetical in that the board president or supervisor. I don't think we want everything coming to a vote. I mean, I don't know what other people think, but I'm not dying to have everything come to a vote.
The conversation we did have was, should we separate between the board? So goes to a conference on district funds, should the other board members vote on that and just be aware, should there be a process? That was separate from us from trying to track the superintendent at every single, that seemed redundant to us and not a good.
He goes off to the superintendent's meeting in Albany or whatever. Whatever.
Yep. I don't really,
I don't need to vote on that.
So we have a policy meeting on Thursday. We'd be happy to take a look at that paragraph, rework it to make it so it's much more amenable.
I get what you're saying about whether you want to just at least have notice to the rest of the board.
For other board members is what we're thinking. that sense.
Yeah, I do think the board president should at least have some superintendent's travels. Superintendent is that we can't just give carte blanche.
Right.
That would be fiscally unwise. But I think the sentiment of the committee was that we preferred not to have to take a vote on everything, and we wanted to make sure the rest of the board was comfortable with that.
Agreed.
So we'll rework that paragraph on Thursday and bring it back for us. Well, my apologies. I move policy 6830R for a first reading. There's no questions. I mean, I don't think we'll make many more changes beyond that, so read it thoroughly for the second reading once we vote on the first reading.
Okay. All in favor regarding first reading? That's everyone. Thanks.
See you next board meeting.
And so we'll see that policy back in the future, correct? All right. Any other business by the board or the superintendent?
If I may, just for a second, Rob.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Just for folks listening at home, beyond looking at the expense reimbursement policy, a reminder that the policy committee has been in a 3 to 4 month process of reviewing the 15 policies that are located within the special education section, policies 4321 and through 4321.16. There's no 13. We'll talk about that at some point in time. So we've been having a number of phenomenal conversations with the members of EILC, with our special education department, our administrators, some principals and teachers, a great deal of parents. Folks who want to participate in that process, please continue to do so. And we expect for the full board to have all 16 of those special education policies coming to a board meeting soon.
Near you.
But just know that we've been going through them painstakingly, literally, not just sentence by sentence, but word by word. And we're excited for the final product when that comes.
I was kind of wondering what happened to him. But it's always nice. Connor, go ahead.
And that GEA site-based council meeting, I accidentally said 5:30, but it's 5 o'clock this Thursday.
That's right. I saw that. 5 o'clock.
In time for 5:45 policy.
Right.
Yes.
You've got Brad. I might make it, but we'll see. You never know about myself. But you've got Brad, and others will probably be there as well. Anything else? Are you good, Dr. Brown? Okay, I don't think the board has to vote on that, so we'll, without objection, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned. So what's the deal with her? She's made one meeting.
Danielle, no. I'm thinking two. Painkillers, Dr. Brown?
Really?
At least probably both. You always leave something.
You look a little...